Good afternoon, to everyone on the call who is prompt and on time. We're just going to wait a couple more minutes before we start the formal proceedings of today's webinar. So bear with us a couple more minutes. Thanks again for attending so far.
Very good morning to you, Sam and Vincent.
Hey, good morning to you, Sid and Sharad. Glad to be here at this webinar.
Thanks all for joining from both the panelists and the attendee side. Should be a good session.
Sam, what you don't know is me and Vincent, we go a long way back. Even before his current role. He used to come to India and we used to meet up in different roles and different companies.
Correct.
So this is almost like autopilot for you today then, between the two of you.
It is a homecoming, it's an alumni meet of sorts.
We should have done this much earlier, right?
Okay, great. So let's get the ball rolling. Let's start. Anyone who comes in will be coming in direct. So let's begin. So good afternoon and welcome to this fireside chat hosted by Mercer Metal and Amazon Web Services, titled Leveraging Technology to Ensure Continuity in Exams and Learning. Well, we're very grateful to all of you for taking time out of your day to be with us here today. We have two very engaging, very knowledgeable speakers with us today, and I will ask them to introduce themselves shortly. But before we get into the meat of the session, just a few housekeeping items that I'd like to talk you through. As it is virtual, as we're not in person, we want to try and allow as much interactivity between the panelists and the audience as possible. And we have a few different mechanisms to do that, which I'll just talk you through. So firstly, of course, I can already see being very active is the chat feature. So as if you want to add comment, analysis, and thoughts to the conversation that is happening, please do so there. Secondly, we have the Q&A feature. If you have a formal question, a formal retort to some of the opinions and views shared by the panel, please put that in there, and we will try and get to as many of those as possible during the more informal fireside chat part of this webinar. And thirdly, we're going to have two interventions throughout this webinar, which are polls. One will be just after Vincent's piece of the slides, and then a final poll towards the end of the fireside chat. Please do put your opinions and your thoughts into those polls. They're multiple choice, as we will try to discuss those live as they come in. So hopefully those three elements will allow you to be interactive, engaged, and get a lot out of this webinar. And without further ado, I'm going to ask the two main panelists to introduce themselves, Siddhartha and Vincent. Siddhartha will introduce himself as well as Mercer Metal, and then we'll go through to Vincent to run through some broad slides and some broad trends that we're seeing in education before the fireside chat and cameos from Sharad and Kaustubh. So Siddhartha, if you'd like to introduce yourself and then pass across to Vincent, that'd be fantastic.
Good afternoon to all the viewers. For the sake of simplicity, you could just call me Sid for the rest of the webinar. Otherwise, a lot of the time would be going into just pronouncing my name. A very big thank you to AWS and the Metal team for organizing this webinar, especially Vincent and Sam. Great catching up with all of you. Very quick introduction to Mercer Metal. I'm sure many viewers would know Mercer because it's world's largest HR consulting company. The name Metal comes from an acquisition Mercer made in 2018. This acquisition actually added an online assessment platform to Mercer's already rich bouquet of offerings. We curate and administer online exams, which can measure knowledge, skill, cognition levels, and personality and behavior. So we currently work with nearly 5,000 plus corporates in 90 plus countries. But our best kept secret is the work that we do with nearly 250 education institutes. Some marquee customers who use our platform to conduct exam are Cambridge and Concord College in the UK, University of Cincinnati in the US, In the APAC region, we work with Ghent University, the Korea in the Korea campus of theirs, NTUC Learning Hub, and
Oops.
I think we might have lost Sid up there, Sid. So let's give him 10 seconds. Vincent, why don't you just do a brief introduction of yourself and your role while we wait for Sid to come back in.
Thank you, Sam. Hi, everybody. This is Vincent Kwok. It's really a pleasure of mine to be part of this panelists and speakers on this session on how we can leverage technology to drive continuity in teaching and learning and exams. I'm really excited to be part of this. It's so good to be seeing some old friends again, like Sid, and you know, I'm really looking forward to our interaction with each one of you, and really hope that you will actually benefit and get some value out of this session.
I am so sorry. I have just joined back, Vincent. This is one of the worst things that happen when you are in an online scenario. And
so
but
let me finish.
Let
me finish first, and I'll pass it back to you, Sid.
Yes,
so
yes.
I'm responsible for the business for education, research, healthcare, and nonprofit for Asia Pacific and Japan. I work essentially with all these customers and ensuring that their journey into the cloud is a smooth and very, very exciting one. And we really want to help our customers reap the benefit of all what the cloud is able to provide to them. That's just for me. So maybe back to you, Sid.
Yeah. Thank you. For audience who don't know, India's got battered by 2 cyclones, COVID, and God knows what all is happening in our country right now. So that's why a small power cut, which made me go offline. I think I was talking about our work with education setups. We work with nearly 200 plus education institutes across the world who use our platform to conduct exams. And I was sharing some names across the world. So we work with Cambridge, Concord College in the UK, University of Cincinnati, and the Washington Center in the US. We work with Emirates Institute of Banking and Financial Studies in the Middle East. In the APAC region, we work with Ghent University, Korea campus. We've been working with them from 2016 onwards. We work with NTUC Learning Hub in Singapore, the University of Nottingham and Ningbo, China, Inter University in Malaysia. So very prestigious names across the world. In India, we have nearly 70 plus education setups, very prestigious names like Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, Indian School of Business, which are our customers. To give you an idea of the scale that we manage, last year we delivered nearly 20 million assessments on our platform, which roughly translates to about 53,000 assessments in one day. We actually hit a peak of 100,000 assessments in October 2019, and we applied for a world record of sorts. So, I hope it gives you an idea about the scale of operations that we have. We're kind of blessed with a very large country with a very large population. So kind of numbers ramp up there. We are headquartered out of India, and India's population is about 1.3 billion. So we have a lot of students in the universities and schools across. This year we got acknowledged by Gartner in their report on proctoring for higher ed institutes. So proctoring is our industry term for remote invigilation of exams. So we got highlighted in the Gartner report as well for 2019-20. I really look forward to sharing our story with all of you today, and would love my discussion with Vincent, Sam, and all other panelists on how to keep education on in a lockdown world. For me, I've been part of Mercer Metal leadership for nearly 4 years now. I have seen Metal grow from a very nascent startup to becoming one of the largest online assessment entities in the world, and would love to share the story there as well with all of you. I'm currently in the role of CEO of Mercer Metal. So over to you, Sam.
Awesome. That's great. That's great, Sid. Thanks very much. So if I need to revise for an exam, I can just use the database of questions answered in that 50,000 a day that you have, and I should be able to pass, right?
You'll have to pay for it, Sam.
That can be arranged. Awesome. So yeah, fantastic interaction on the chat. We have people from the Philippines, from Bahrain, from Malaysia, from Dubai. Again, thank you all for joining. Please keep spamming that chat. We love to hear from you. So Vincent, I'll just pass over to you now for a little while. Hopefully a lot of people on the call have heard a lot about Amazon Web Services, but maybe not so much about what we're doing in education and also what we've been doing this year in education. So we'd love to hear and pass over to you at this point.
Well, thank you, Sam. Very quickly, this is a great opportunity for me to actually help set the stage for our discussion this afternoon. I hope everybody knows AWS, which stands for Amazon Web Services, right? We've been in the cloud computing market now since 2006, so which makes us about 14 years old. We've been, involved in this industry, very nascent on, but then it's been growing so rapidly over the last few years, and in particularly during this particular context of COVID-19. The cloud is really unique in that it is a set of IT services that is available to anyone in the world that has access to the internet to be able to gain access to. And it's a full range of IT services ranging from compute, databases, storage, mobile capabilities, analytics, including even some of the most advanced AI and machine learning capabilities. And AWS actually provides this whole range of services to anyone who have access to via the internet. But I'm not going to spend too much time on AWS today, except just to introduce you. But I'm just going to set some stage for us in terms of what we are observing during this particular period of time. And it's important for us to remember that. And therefore, I'm entitled my initial talk to just, sharing about scale, speed, and security. And so if we can go to the next slide. We all know what's happening. There's no need for me to actually elaborate going on. What we are seeing is that school system, education ministries, institutions have been thrown into an environment and a situation that they have never been faced before. What they originally thought that they could do with physical face-to-face is no longer viable, where many of our countries are still in closure and in lockdown. And therefore, there must be a different way to think about how we can ensure that education, teaching and learning continues for all our learners. And if we can go to the next slide. We're talking about understanding and coming up with new models right now, whether is it just for the K-12 segment or even the tertiary segment. But if you look at the stats that we have, right, 1.5 billion students have been out of school as of 8th of April. This number could have gone up, but we think that's really the full range of the students that we know that are out of schools. And then, it's been reported also in Times of India and the World Economic Forum how this situation of COVID-19 is just going to change the way we think about education. And it requires us to think very, very hard about what this new education model is all about. And so going to the next slide. In particularly for a lot of higher education institutions, we're seeing that so many of them had no choice but to pivot very, very quickly to an online mode of providing teaching and learning, right? It's something that they have not experienced before, but now they have to flip 180 degrees to doing something that is online completely. While tertiary institutions have the capacity and, to a certain degree, the primary, secondary, and post-secondary school system, however, are faced with even more difficult situation. And they tend not to have all those capabilities that the tertiary institutions have. And so, when we are faced with this kind of situation, we have to somehow act to provide ongoing education, and in relation to education, ongoing assessment. Because, right, we want to continue to understand how our students are doing. And that's something that we want to be talking about today. And it is no longer an option for us to just think of face-to-face and going back to campus style scenario. We absolutely must think of either having both offline and online, as well as fully online, just in case some things like this happen again. And we will never know if this is going to, flare up again, this situation of COVID-19. And so we need to really think and work with institutions to help you, adopt technology that actually makes sense and help you sustain through at this particular period. And so that's the context that I'm setting for this particular discussion. And right now, back over to you, Sam.
Awesome. Thank you there for setting the scene there, Vincent. I'm going to call in Sid just for an initial reaction to that. But firstly, I just want to now invite everyone who's watching to partake in the poll that we're going to now open up to the audience. So please pick one of your favorite answers, or one of the answers that you most believe in terms of that multiple choice question. And then we'll try and get some commentary from the panelists on that poll in a minute. But before that, and while everyone does answer, Sid, it's an interesting time. Education maybe wasn't always prepared for this blended or this more full online version of education that we've seen in the last few months. How have you sort of seen your customers think through the changes that they have to consider, moving forward?
So Sam, I think I completely agree with Vincent. I think value of human life has increased. I think this is not the last pandemic of or an epidemic of this nature that we are seeing. Mostly authorities, education ecosystem, parents, me being a parent myself, we will be very, very careful with our lives and our kids' lives, especially because that's the next generation we're talking about. So I think rightly so, people have learned their lessons, and I completely agree with Vincent that this is not the end. People, even if there is a graded opening of education setups happen, all education setups have to prepare for a world where they need to be prepared for 100% online going forward. And that includes virtual classrooms, and it includes remote assessments as well. So I think completely resonate with Vincent's view, and would love to see what people write on the chat as well. In the education space, frankly, I have a bit of a strong view. I feel education space has been a bit slow in adopting technology. Solutions for online education, whether it is virtual classrooms or remote assessments, they've been maturing at a tremendous pace and are available for a quick deployment as we speak today. And especially, I can speak for online examinations. The existing technologies not only ensure that the traditional exam process, what people are used to, can be done completely remotely without reducing academic rigor with the same ease. It can all be done. But it also offers additional advantages to faculty, students, and institutes. Just to give you an example, the auto grading capability. So we have our entire test engine on AWS. We have a very exhaustive auto grading capability on our test engine. So if the educator is able to align to about 26 different types of question formats and answer keys that we have, we could completely automate the way grading happens. And if you talk to any professor or a teacher, he would tell you that 70% of my time goes into administrative tasks of answering, checking the answer sheets and doing manual grading for every question and things like that. Imagine if you are able to usher in a complete transformation of the space. That's what's possible as of today. But we can't miss the three basic hygiene issues that are there. Frankly, one is the digital divide issue. I think countries like Singapore won't have that problem, but many countries in APAC, Africa, and the world would have the issue of a digital asset being in a learner's hand. So a laptop or a PC with a webcam or even a smartphone is not in everybody's hand. So digital divide is something that the authorities and the education ecosystem need to think about. Adequate bandwidth again is a given. If you're not online, then obviously no learning can happen online. And the third aspect is the IT literacy and the mindset of all three constituents of education ecosystem, that is student, professor, and institute. I think we need to grow that muscle, that we need to use online technologies which are available today to move online as much as possible.
Awesome.
That said,
So
I feel, COVID-19 and national lockdowns, I agree with Vincent, have nudged the entire education ecosystem to adopt these technologies. And I feel that's the kind of silver lining we can see in these dark clouds right now.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're right. I think there is great opportunity in terms of providing equitable access through online, and this has maybe accelerated that. So I've been told in my ear that we have the results of the poll ready. So if we can put them up, and then we can have a quick look through and talk about that. So maybe I'll just sort of commentate on what I can see, and then if you two want to jump in and add any sort of further insights, that'd be great. So I guess fundamentally and statistically here, we're seeing that cheating prevention concern is really very prevalent, Vincent and Sid, and then kind of coming down the list, accessibility, connectivity, that equitable access to ensure that everyone has the same ability to take that test and to take it at the right place and the right time, through to that seamless user experience. So any initial thoughts and comments? Sid, I know we're going to talk about the cheating element in a minute. So maybe if we kind of want to touch on some of the others first, it'd be interesting.
Yeah, maybe I'll just start off. Totally agree with Sid on the accessibility and connectivity issue. I also want to point out that while Singapore is a small country, we still have our digital divide. We still have students that do not have access to equipment and devices. And, when Singapore went into complete home-based learning, the Ministry of Education was actually very aware of what they need to do. And there was so much effort going on, especially with the community, where people are contributing secondhand equipment, getting it refurbished, getting it tested, and getting it sent to these students. And then, of course, bringing along, some of these, making sure that the last mile connectivity also happens. And so just because Singapore is a small country and a fairly well-endowed country doesn't mean that we don't have the digital divide and the equity issue. We still have that. And so I think this is something that all governments need to be very conscious of what they need to do. And I guess technology, when applied in the right way, can actually overcome this through some shared resources. Like I don't know, I'm just thinking aloud, right? Maybe those computer centers that may be available to be opened up and to be used by students to take exams. That might be one additional way for us to think about how the government can cooperate with businesses that runs these kind of facilities. Or in some situations, community centers that provide, a lot of these learning facilities that they also can play a part in this. So this is just some examples that I can think of that might help address some of these accessibility and connectivity issues.
So chipping in, Sam, on the aspect of academic integrity and cheating being the most important aspect, I think we have a surprise for all the viewers. We have my co-panelists Sharad and Kaustubh, and instead of talking about what can be done, we will actually show you what is available today for you to adopt. So I will, pull them into the conversation at the later part of my narration. Looking at all the other aspects, Sam, maybe I'll summarize them into three critical capabilities that we need to think through and discuss and debate as an education ecosystem when we are talking about online assessments. I think at the root of it is accurate measurement of the learning outcome. I think somewhere just talking online examination, we sometimes forget the real reason why we are taking an exam. The flexibility of the online examination system to align to an educator's agenda, to understand and summarize what exactly is he trying to measure, and then having the ability to understand the exam format which works best for that measurement, understand what kind of questions are needed to be posed to the audience, what kind of answer format flexibility that we want to give to the applicant. Like it could be a very simple multiple choice question, or it could be a long answer type. It could be a diagram or a graph, a maths equation or a chemical equation. It could be very varied. So the online exam system needs to have the capability to align itself to the educator's agenda, maybe it could also be a simulator which apes an actual study or work environment. So that's the base pillar that is needed for a good test engine. Beyond that, very important to highlight that exams are a here and now, even if it is paper and pen. And I think we all can reminiscence that whenever we have taken exam, if the exam has to start at 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock in the morning, it has to start at 9 o'clock. If it starts at 9:05, we were fretting over the fact that we've lost 5 minutes of time, which is due to us, correct? So exams are a very here and now occurring. Online exams have to be built the same way. So if an online exam has to start at 9, it has to start at 9. It cannot start at 9:01. So robustness of the test engine and its ability to scale. Because remember what we're doing is we're just taking an offline experience into an online experience. So you might have, say, a class of 500 or a class of 5,000 logging in and clicking on the test link at the same time. So the exam system has to be built in such a way that it's able to take concurrent usage of that nature and give a seamless experience to all the test takers at the time mentioned for that particular exam. So uh, online exam has to be built to address scale at high concurrency, managing at low bandwidths, keeping in mind the digital abilities of the student, limitations of the device. So a lot of things have to be thought through when you're planning an online examination system. The last bit is, and the most important bit is the academic integrity, because the most of the educators I've spoken to, all of them have said that value of the institution is most reflected by the rigor of their exam process. And I think across the world, if you pick up any reputed institute, the exam process is very, very strict and it's a very high barrier for students to cross. So most of our research time and research resources have gone into figuring out how do we solve for ensuring that the academic integrity of their test instance can be maintained as per the requirements of the educator. So these are the three broad areas that we focused on. We would go deeper into educating the viewers on how we have layered our test engine with a AI algorithm, taught that AI algorithm over millions of assessments to flag off unfair means. So we have a lot of unfair means that we can flag off and can get caught by AI, and then how we can ensure even a human proctor can remotely completely simulate a test environment and be invigilating his own class. So we'll actually show you the entire flow to give confidence to the viewers that solutions are there for online examinations to happen with the same amount of academic integrity with which offline or paper-based assessments happen today.
That's great. And I think, it's a fantastic segue. I mean, we really want to see this demo now. I think the audience wants to see the demo. There's a lot of questions about this, the integrity, the ability to truly believe that the students are taking this, and there's no other actors. So I guess without further ado, let's get a little taster of this. It'd be fantastic.
Absolutely. I'll call in my colleague Sharad and Kaustav to give a demo. Just before they start, we would actually kind of break down the entire invigilation process into two-step process. The first step is about admitting the right student into an exam. So Sharad would log in and then quickly take the viewers through what kind of anti-cheating engines we have on top of the test engine. So he will just introduce the tools, and then we would have Kaustav maybe taken an exam and then proctored by Sharad, so that we can give you a very real life feel of once the right candidate has got admitted to the exam, then what does he or she go through during the exam process. So Sharad is the Chief Product Officer for Mercermatic, and Kaustav is a Senior Product Manager working with Sharad. So over to you, Sharad and Kaustav.
Thank you, Sid, and good afternoon to all the panelists and all the attendees. Really happy to be presenting here and talking to all of you. So before I actually jump into the demo, I'd just like to set the context, and maybe by sharing my screen, I'll walk you through the whole process. So what we'll be demoing now is essentially an assessment engine using which one can create assessments, add different types of questions, schedule the assessments, then share those assessments with the candidates who would then be taking those assessments, And then on the admin side of things, how an invigilator on real time can invigilate the students while they take the test. And all this can be done sitting from anywhere in the world. Uh, so the candidate could be in India and the invigilator could be sitting in US. So it's all a seamless experience. Uh, Let me just start by sharing my screen. Right. So here you can see for the purpose of demo, we have created a demo test out here. This demo test has 3 sections. It has 4 questions. The duration is 20 minutes. And this is the test link that basically gets shared with the candidate. In this test link, you see there are various settings that the test creator can enable. So this is the access time. What this essentially means is that I can block the access time for this particular link to a defined time period. And any candidate, when they try to access this link outside of this time period, it will not be allowed. For the purpose of demo, I'm going to keep this access time open. Then we have something called a Metal Secure browser. This is essentially a lockdown browser, which once turned on would let the exam run only inside this secure browser. And during the duration of this exam, the candidate will not be allowed to go outside the assessment window. So what that means is alt tab functions, copy paste functions, extending their screen or duplicating their screen, everything will be blocked. So this provides an extremely safe test taking environment. Then the next setting we have is called browsing tolerance. What this means is that in certain tests, one can set the number of times the student is allowed to go outside the window, right? So this could be sometimes in terms of there could be certain alerts on the system, or in case it is a low to medium stake test, then maybe you are okay if the student kind of goes out of the test window once or twice. For high stake test, it is essentially very low. It is set at maybe 1 warning. For the sake of this demo, I'm going to keep it at 10 warnings. And then we have something called advanced visual proctoring. I think this is the core of our proctoring service, which we'll be demoing to you. I have enabled advanced visual proctoring for this test. This essentially comprises of 3 main settings. One is, so before moving on to these settings, the moment advanced visual proctoring is turned on, that means the invigilator will be able to see the candidate as the candidate attempts the test. So essentially, we would be taking the permission from the candidate to access their webcam, their microphones, their laptop screens. And the feed of these input devices would be then sent to the invigilator, who could in real time look at what the candidate is doing on their screen, as well as how the candidate the candidate webcam feed as they take the test. So essentially, you would be able to see like you are seeing our video feed, and you can basically detect if there is an additional person in the frame, or if the candidate is using a mobile phone or some sort of a book. Moving on, candidate screen capture essentially enables the invigilator to take the screenshots or the screen captures of the candidate's laptop, just to ensure that there is no help software which is running around the same time when the assessment is given. Candidate authorization is essentially, you can compare it to the real world, that before you enter a test center to take an exam, there is a checking of your ID to make sure you are the same person who's supposed to take this exam. So this is an online version of it. We would basically be demoing this as well. And then lastly, we also have the capability turned on to record the whole video of the candidate's test taking session. So this can be utilized, especially in education sector, also in government sector, wherein there could be need to kind of go back and refer to the whole session recording in case, a student says that, hey, you guys have flagged me saying that I was cheating, but I was not cheating. So, this could be a very easy way to audit the whole exam session. Now, there are a couple of other options. So essentially, the test link can be an OTP protected link, which means that in case you add a particular student to this test, before the student can start the test, we will be sending an OTP to the student's email ID. And only once the correct OTP, one-time password, is added, we would allow the student to proceed with the test. Couple of other settings, IP address restrictions. So essentially, I can, very easily specify an IP range. So for example, if a student is supposed to take an exam from a given city, and you can specify the IP range that is allowed. And in case, student tries to have a proxy take this exam who's sitting in some other place, then we would not allow them to start this test. And then again, we have the test resume. So many times what happens, and I think this is a very, very common question that we usually get, is around what happens if the internet gets disconnected during the test? Or what happens if I mistakenly close the test? So using this setting, you can essentially allow the test to resume. This can be done in two ways. There could be an unsupervised resume, wherein if the candidate comes back within 30 minutes, we allow the test to resume. And there could be a supervised resume, wherein again the candidate would be authorized, his identity checked, and only then the test would be allowed. So these are all the settings. And now for the purpose of this demo, very quickly, there is no access time. There is no secure browser because it will basically kill all the applications, including Zoom. So I would turn it off for the time being. Browsing tolerance has been set to 10 warnings. Audio visual proctoring is on. And these are the settings that we have set. This is the test link that can be communicated to the candidates either via invitation emails or some other channels as the institute may want. For the time being, I have shared this link with my colleague Kaustubh. While I'll be portraying the persona of an invigilator who would be supervising Kaustubh as he takes the test, Kaustubh would basically use this link and demo the candidate side of the, or the student side of the test taking experience. So before I move on to the candidate side of experience, Sid, you wanted to chip in something?
Actually, I just wanted to summarize for the audience while you invite Kaustubh. So, right. The first step is about admitting the right student into an exam and ensuring that he or she is the one who's taking the exam throughout the duration of the exam. So what we do is we've built it into our systems where we work with the institute and pre-register students with their identity established. So before starting the test, we ask the student to capture his picture and also a picture of the ID that the institute allows him and submit that for a manual authenticator to come in and check that this is the person, right person is there, and then he allows that person. It's I reckon an exact replica of allowing somebody into the admitting somebody into the exam classroom, frankly. Once the person comes in, the web camera is on and that person then is being monitored by AI. And what Sharad just now told you is we have the option of only AI proctoring the entire exam process and giving you a credibility index at the end of the exam, or we have an option of having a human proctor. So you can envision me as a professor and I have 20 tiles or 15 tiles on my laptop where all my students are there in front of me and I'm remotely invigilating them taking the assessment while I am being assisted by an AI. So in case, for example, I'm right now proctoring Vincent, Sam and Sharad, and if any one of them is looking away from the screen or vanishes from the screen for the time being, or they have a mobile phone in their hand, the AI would make that tile go red. And then I can actually click on that tile and bring it to the front of my screen and I can pause the assessment remotely as well. So beyond AI, the second level of authentication is a human proctoring. And the third level that Sharad also spoke about is for very high stake assessments. What we insist is run the entire exam on a secure browser of Metal. So this is a small download that happens. It's a browser, and the assessment starts, or it's launched in the browser. So this browser has this capability of ensuring that no other resources of the laptop are available to the student. So you cannot open a chat window, you can't duplicate the screen, you cannot try and Google an answer. All of that gets blocked completely. And the video recording of the student, taking the exam, video recording of the screen, the time, where exactly is the student spending time, and audio recording of the student is done real time. So, and it's being monitored by AI and human as well. So we've added as many layers of authenticity as possible to make sure that we ape the paper and pen process of exam as well as invigilation to the hilt. So I know a lot of questions are coming up, and that's the reason Sharad I stepped in, because a lot of questions are coming up that what if somebody's sitting beside me, and what if I have another laptop behind me and things like that. So I thought maybe I'll just set the context right, because the flags that Sharad would just now show you is, if you're taking the assessment and you're looking away from the screen and again, in the audit trail, a flag would be raised that the candidate is looking away from the screen. So if you need to type something away from the screen, then you'll have to look away from the screen. Similarly, if you want to replace yourself with somebody else taking the exam, then you'll have to vanish from the screen and somebody needs to come in. So that will get recorded as a flag by AI. Similarly, if you try and open a browser, it will actually not allow you to open a browser, and it will give you a warning that you've used one of your browsing tolerances already. So these are features which are there. Just hold your horses. I'll request Sharad to just show you that once, and then maybe we'll come back to some of the questions that are being asked. Over to you, Sharad. Back.
Right, thanks. So like we set all those proctoring settings as I showed you a moment ago. I have shared the test link with my colleague Kaustubh, who would basically be taking the persona of a student taking a test from his home. So Kaustubh, whenever you're ready, please go ahead, share your screen, and then maybe start.
Sure. So just let me first switch off my video, because we'll need to capture the video feed, and there's only one program which can access it. I'll share my screen and I'll take you through the candidate experience now. So I hope my screen is visible. What you can see is I have taken the test link which Sharad had sent me, and I have pasted it in a browser, and immediately the candidate gets the option to launch the test. To begin with, the candidate is asked to share his screen. Thereafter, we take the webcam and the audio permissions. Again, all of these three permissions are asked because we monitor the candidate via the audio, the video, and the screen capture. It takes about 5 to 10 seconds for the exam to load in the browser. At this point of time, we're also doing the necessary background checks. This is an introduction section for the candidate. You can type in a custom message which you want to display to the candidate. We also show the candidate a quick summary of what's in the test, how many sections, how many questions in sections, is the section timed or not, as well as the overall test duration and the overall number of questions. There is also a things to remember section wherein we list down the most common points which we want the candidate to be aware of. This particular section is called the registration details. Candidate here has to type out their email address, their first name. These two things are mandatory. Beyond this, all other details are optional. In this test, Sharad has also made my last name optional, so I am typing that out as well. I can leave the other registration fields for the moment. This information gets captured and it's visible in the report as well as to the live proctor. This is the 3-point candidate authentication that we talked about. The first thing the candidate has to do is to capture his photo. And then we ask them to capture a ID card photo. So I'll just use a dummy ID card for privacy sake. And I submit it. Now these two things have been captured and have been shared with the authorizer. So in this case, Sharad is the authorizer, and I will hand it back to him to show you what is the experience on the authorization front.
Sure. So some of the concerns were around, how do we ensure that it is the correct candidate who's writing this test? So this is the part that would probably answer those questions. Now, candidate who is Kaustubh has submitted his own snapshot and his ID. And me being the invigilator who's sitting remotely, I will receive these details and I'll have an option to look at both photos, compare if it is the same person, and then either allow or disallow him from taking the test. So just give me a moment while I share my screen and I'll show you that experience. Right, so I hope my screen is visible. And this was the view that, that the invigilator had access to earlier. This is the test view, as you can see out here. Similarly, I can go to a live feed view by clicking here. And it essentially shows that for the demo test that we had created, there is one candidate who's already giving the test, whom I had authorized earlier. And there is one candidate who's waiting for authorization. This is Kaustubh. So let me just click here. And this is the view that the invigilator gets on their screen. So I have the details of the student, his email ID, his first name, and all the other details that he may have filled. I have the candidate snapshot and I have the ID of candidate. Now using this, I can very easily verify if it is a genuine candidate or not. And in case I have any doubts, I can always chat with this candidate. So by clicking here, I can tell them that maybe, your ID snapshot has not come clear. And please resubmit. So the candidate can at runtime resubmit the snapshot. Many times what happens is that in case, despite of resubmissions, there is a genuine attempt by the candidate to kind of, use some malpractice, then we have this block button using which we can even block the candidate from further submissions. In this case, I'm going to click here and allow Kaustubh to take the test. So once I've allowed Kaustubh, Kaustubh would be able to start the test on at his end. And maybe Kaustubh, you can start the show the test taking scenario, and then I'll come back and show the overall proctoring demo.
Sure, sure.
Yeah. So now Kaustubh has been authorized, and you would see that he gets a message that he's been authorized and he can start the test. Go ahead, Kaustubh.
Okay, so I will now click on Start Test. Since we are using the video audio feed, we disclose to the candidate that you're being monitored. And now we are into the test. So this is the candidate's user experience and the screen on which he attempts the assessment. On the left-hand side, what you see is the question. This is the question pane. And on the right-hand side, you have the answer pane. So this is an MCQ type question. And I can choose whatever is the correct response. On Metal, there are over 15 plus question types that we have to offer. If you look at the top part, you can also see which section of the test I am in and how much time is remaining in this particular test. So let me move on to the next section. Again, this is a very simple MCQ type question. And the third section has a fill in the blank question. So I can just type the right answer and click on next question. But okay, so, and this is the last question type that we have for you. This is a diagram type question. So as you can see on the left-hand side, we have different shapes and widgets, which can be used to draw different kinds of flowcharts, diagrams, whether it be for economics kinds of courses or engineering or mathematical drawing. This is just a small subset of the types of questions that we have on the platform. I think separately we can tell you about the entire breadth and depth of questions available. But right now, I would just pass it back to Sharad and let him take you through the cheating features.
Sure. Thanks, Kaustubh. And while I pull up my screen, so we have close to 26 different type of questions, which are separated into knowledge type and application type. So right from coding to long answer, fill in the blanks, upload type questions, we pretty much have everything. So to show you the invigilator side of things, this is a proctoring dashboard that we had come earlier to. We can see there is one live feed ongoing out here. And I click on this and I see there is a tile which denotes Kaustubh as one candidate. Think of this as a CCTV view. So we can have upwards of 25, 30, 50 tiles out here, depending upon how the test is configured. So one proctor at a time typically can manage 10 to 30 students at one given point. So this particular view is usually full of, let's say, 10 to 20 tiles. And you would notice that there is a red outline with a small flag on the top left corner. This means that while we were talking and while I was not looking at Kaustubh giving the test, our AI algorithm was keeping an eye on the candidate. And our AI algorithm has kind of detected that there's some malpractice being attempted, and that is why he's flagged this candidate with a red highlight over there. Now, as an invigilator, I can very easily come to this view and I can see, one tile is highlighted. I can quickly jump inside this tile. And this is the view that I get. So here I can see the candidate snapshots as they come in. I can, at any given point of time, click on the registration details to make sure it is indeed the same candidate who had been authorized to take this test, and what are his details in terms of email and rest of the stuff. Coming back onto this screen, this is, like I said, this is the face view of the candidate. At the same time, I can toggle here and I can see what is going on the candidate screen as well. So in case candidate is moving outside of the assessment screen and going to Google to maybe search some of the answers, we are very easily able to detect that. On the right hand side, you see the logs. So the test is taking place on 3rd of June. It started at 1:21 India time, 1:17 India time below. And since the test has started, these are all the flags that our AI system has generated, right? So if I can just simply click on one of these flags, I see that candidate is not present, So let me just click back here. And I see on this instance at 1:22, the candidate was not present. So that means the candidate may have gotten up and tried to reach out to a book or a help. Similarly, when I click here away from test window, it takes me to the screen view where I detect that candidate might be away from the test window because there is a pop-up out there. Right, and candidate is basically looking at the Zoom, and that's why there is a screen away from screen detection. Similarly, we have many other flags like automatic detection of mobile phone, additional person on the screen, and this we will basically show you when we take you through the final report that is generated post this test. You can.
I'm gonna have to stop you there. highly functional demo.
Sure.
And it really does speak to a lot of the questions that have been raised in the chat, but I'm slightly conscious of time, and we need another poll and a kind of final surmise of this webinar. So
Okay.
thanks so much for your time in the demo. But what I'd like to do now is ask the team to bring up the poll for the audience to answer. And whilst I do that, just get Vincent to sort of weigh in on a more holistic view of all of this. So Vincent, this is obviously one feature in what we might call an online and a digital school, and how you can enhance learning through an online delivery. What are some of the first solutions, first things to consider for an educational institution to have that successful journey into an online and into a blended learning infrastructure?
Thanks, Sam. Great question. Firstly, I think number one is to understand what your own expectation is and what you hope to get out of that particular solution. I want to clearly advise that technology is not necessarily the solution for all the problems that you're going to solve, right? And it is important for you to have clear understanding and criteria of success defined out. Especially when you are going into a situation where you got to go on fully digital, right? You have no choice but to go digital. So the question is, what then can you do that will slowly build your confidence in understanding how to manage and the strategy that you need to adopt when you go digital, right? So start with things that are simple. Don't try to break it just because you feel that you want to break it, but start to gain confidence. Do things to gain confidence. Do simple assessments that are formative rather than summative. Do things that are regular and easily automated, like the auto grading capability of some of the systems like what was shown, and test it out so that you actually know when to apply what technology in what situation. And to be very clear, you don't want to say that I cannot do it because just this one thing cannot work. That's not how technology is going to help you. You are in a situation where you have to see and figure out how to use technology. And so I would really advise you to think about that, how to make it work for you first, rather than trying to break it from a solution standpoint. Back to you, Sam.
That's great insight. Thank you, Vincent. I believe the final poll is ready. So Ankur, if you'd just like to pull that up. And we're about 4 minutes from time here. So what I potentially ask both Sid and Vincent to do is just spend 1 minute, 2 minutes on any closing remarks they'd like to do to conclude this, in terms of reaching out, getting insights from both Mercer Metal and from AWS, and then we'll close this webinar. So I'll start with you, Sid.
So I think one confidence that I wanted to give all the viewers is most of the educations that I think we can see from the answer of the poll as well, are experimenting with online education as well as online examination. And these technologies are available. We have seen a sudden surge in the last 2 months. We've done about 550,000 assessments for various education entities in just 2 months. This is the kind of volume we used to see in a year. So I think we are on the right track in terms of adopting things. I completely agree with Vincent. I think we need to question some of the hypotheses that are there in our mind. We need to take smaller size bite that we can digest well, not try and automate for the sake of automating everything. And just to share some experience, we worked with a tech university in APAC recently. We conducted nearly 40,000 assessments for them in 3 days. And we had to train 670 professors to proctor their own students. So, I think technology is there. It is a very simple technology. It can be adopted if the entire ecosystem comes together and makes a definite effort in that direction. I think we will be able to keep education on, at least even if the whole world is in a lockdown situation in the year 2020. So very open to sharing more details with all the viewers, and look forward to all the questions, and we will for sure have a team which answers everything. And I think you can reach out to us. We will share our contact details are there on the slide. I would love to take more questions from all of you.
Awesome. Thanks, Sid. And over to you, Vincent.
Thanks, Sam. I think one remark that I will leave with everybody, just take this as a journey if you have not even embarked on it. And so if this is something new to you, just go and learn about it, experiment with it, try. There's no loss in learning something new. What you don't want to find yourself in is in a situation where you are faced with no action, or you don't know what to do because of all your concerns and uncertainties. It is just to experiment, try something different, try something new, figure out what works, and talk to Metal, and understand how they have helped others on board, right? As you can, if you heard from Sid, onboarded a new institution, very, very quickly, ran 40,000 assessments. How difficult can that be? I think if we really want to, if we think about our students and how we can actually help them in their learning journey and to allow their learning to continue, I think it will make us take actions and figure out what are things that we can do. And I'd rather that you start earlier rather than like later, because you never know how things is going to plan out. And so plan ahead early, get things going, start the journey into the cloud much, much faster. And you'll probably learn a lot of things along the way and figure out, use the things that works. Over to you, Sam.
Awesome, absolutely. For the 15% in the poll there that have no plans to assess online examination, carpe diem. The time is now, and there's a fantastic opportunity. There's a fantastic solution here to help you walk through that. The team has been posting a lot of useful links in the chat. Please read through them and reach out to the contact details on this last slide here. But with that, again, thank you so much for everyone for attending. We appreciate your chat, your questions, your polling answers. Thank you to Kaustubh, Sharad, Sid and Vincent, our esteemed panelists. And we hope to speak to you all again soon. And everyone stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.